All right, so today we're going to be talking about Chapter 7, Lesson 1. This is all about congruence and transformation. So some of the things we're going to be utilizing in this lesson is going to be some of the things that we did last chapter. First of all, we want to talk about what congruence is. So congruence is when two objects, or more, I guess, two or more, are exactly, that's important, the same size and exactly the same shape. Now, we're going to talk about what that actually looks like and how we write down whether something is congruent to another object or not. But the first thing we want to look at is example 1. It says determine if the two figures are congruent by using transformations and explain your reasoning. So first thing I want to do is I want to go from A to B. So I'm going to use my tracing paper here because it kind of looks like it would be a rotation. But I want to just make sure. So that is my trapezoid A. Now, if I rotate this and put it directly on top here, you will see that it actually covers B exactly, which means that they are exactly the same size. There's no overlap. There's nothing that's being not covered or over covered. They are the same shape because it follows exactly the same structure, the same lines, which means these are congruent and here's the important part, explaining your reasoning, because you can transform A onto B using a rotation. And that's very important how that gets worded. So again, we're going to talk about congruency or not. So these two are congruent. And the reason why we can say that is because you can transform A onto B. And the way that we do that is by using a rotation. That's important. Let's look at example 2 now. It says determine if the two figures are congruent, again by using transformations, and explain your reasoning. Now, just by looking at these, we can see that they're not the same. Because there's 3 here, and there's 3 here. Unfortunately, though, the extra piece is on the end, while the extra piece is in the middle. So these are not congruent. Because no transformation can map the left figure onto the right figure. Now, if we wanted to label these as like 1 and 2, we could. And then we would say we can't map 1 onto 2, or we can't map 2 onto 1. But really, all we have to say is we cannot map them onto each other because there are no transformations that we'll get from this shape to this shape or vice versa. Now, speaking of transformations, let's kind of go over them just very quickly here. So we have 3 that we can talk about that deal with keeping the same size and same shape. Keep in mind, dilations do keep the same shape. However, dilation literally means to get bigger or smaller, which means that they cannot be congruent. But let's talk about this. So a translation, if you recall, translation what that means is we move up, down, left, or right. Now, what that actually means as far as looking at these shapes is my orientation, or the way it's facing, stays the same. Which means I could move AB to look like this. So it's A prime and B prime. A reflection, then, is we flip or make a mirror image. And what that means is the orientation flips. So generally what we have is some kind of line of reflection. This is either going to be the y-axis or the x-axis. In this case, it would be the y-axis because it's vertical. But it could be any line. And then my line would flip, so now A prime and B prime would be like that. And a rotation means that we turn. Or rotate. What that means is the orientation turns as well. So what that could mean is if we go about point B here, it could look something like this. Where the rotation would be in this direction. You could also go in this direction. That would be the same distance. This would be a counterclockwise rotation, where this would be a clockwise rotation. So example 3, it says the pattern below appears along the edge of a plate. What transformations could be used if the first figure is the pre-image, which means this is the pre-image, and the second is the image, which means this one is the image? Well, let's use our tracing paper to draw it. So the different ways that we could do this is by doing a translation, which literally means just moving the paper around. And if I move the paper around, it's not going to match up perfectly. It's not. So it cannot be a translation. Could it be a reflection, though, which literally means everything just flips over? So I could do this, but that doesn't match up still. I could also do this, but that still doesn't match up. What about a rotation? So let's see, if I go 90 degrees clockwise, hey, that matches up. So these are going to be transformed. So it says what transformations can be used. We can use a 90 degree clockwise rotation. To map the pre-image onto the image. All right, so that is going to be the end of lesson 1. If you have any questions, please let me know.